In the last video I talked about how I feel like racism and stuff like that. I didn't say stuff like that, but I should have said, racism, sexism, isms are making a return in this country in a horribly disgusting way. Not just in this country, but I'm focusing on this country because this is where I live and this is where I can best, observe what's going on and talk about what's going on. I may not be an expert on the discussion. Is anybody an expert? You know, um, I just feel like adding to the discussion and making sure there is a discussion about it is incredibly important right now because we are at a crossroads. And if we don't start talking about it, then we're going to be making ourselves look incredibly foolish by ignoring what's happening here. Um, because it is kind of like we're returning to this kind of almost caveman mentality. So what I want to talk about in this video, though, is the concept of how, particularly for African Americans, as an example in this case, for black people and for their forms of entertainment in this country, how they might negatively be affecting racial relations. Now, of course, we've got people right now like Geraldo Rivera, which the irony, of course, and that is that he is a Latino American, and he should know better than to make statements like this. But of course, we're at a time right now where he was making statements about the whole Trayvon Martin thing that, well, you need to tell your kids not to wear hoodies because hoodies are a symbol of, hoodlums. Um, of course, not only is that an ironic statement, it's an ignorant statement. If you live in the Northwest like I do, then you happen to know that mothers, daughters, fathers, brothers, everybody, regardless of anything around here, wears hoodies pretty much 9 months out of the year because it rains quite a lot and there's no telling when it's going to rain or when it's not going to rain because there's maybe not here in Portland, but in certain parts of the Northwest, there is a constant cloud cover. And I don't know if there's a constant cloud cover here, but there's usually cloud cover here. So you never really can tell when it's going to rain, and either you can bring along an umbrella, which the wind usually comes along with the rain and drags that umbrella out of your hand or breaks it. So the best option around here is to wear hoodies. And pretty much everybody does it. I was noting the other day, just sitting waiting for the train, in a group of about 15 to 20 people, there were at least 7 or 8 people wearing hoodies, and it wasn't even raining on that day. They were just, being prepared for the eventuality that it might rain. I think that says a lot about this particular culture here in the Northwest, and how you can't make a blanket statement like that saying, well, if you wear a hoodie, then you're perceived as a hoodlum. It's not necessarily the case. Now, of course, Trayvon lived in Florida, and this horrible tragedy happened in Florida. But that's no excuse for claiming that, of course, a clothing item is denotative of the kind of person that you are. That's just ridiculous. That's profiling. And as somebody who no doubt has some experience with racism and, feeling the hatred of racism, I feel like someone like Geraldo Rivera should be ashamed of himself for making a statement like that. But I digress here. I'm here to talk about maybe how he could have made a better argument. The way, like I'm saying, that African Americans, black people are portrayed in media today is not exactly productive, I would argue, in a lot of ways. Now, in some ways it is, but in a lot of ways it's not. And I think a lot of leaders in the African American community would agree with me on that. Hell, I know a lot of friends who agree with me on that. Uh, it's just, it's sad to see, honestly, um, because I feel like in the 70s and the 80s there was a lot of progress made. People like Bill Cosby, Richard Pryor, using humor to break through the hate. Um, and not only that, but building positive role models for black and African American young men and women at that time. Nowadays, do you really see that kind of positive reflection in the media anymore? I don't. I would argue that you really don't. Um, BET for me kind of says it all. A station like BET, and you could say if you wanted to that there are positive role models now, but I would argue, are they the ones getting the FaceTime over those who are not positive role models? Um, I don't really think so. I mean, a friend of mine brought up the example the other night of Tyler Perry and the Medea movies and how he feels that they kind of rip off the Big Mama's House movies. And the Big Mama's House movies, um, honestly, are a return to the kind of movies that in the like 30s and 40s that white directors were making that they thought that black people would want to watch. You know, it was like the stuff that they thought they wanted to watch. You know, the funny fat old black woman gag or routine, and that's kind of where that comes from. That old Hollywood style. But what people don't realize is that old Hollywood style, particularly in this case, is heavily rooted in racism. Um, and you're recreating images of racism. You're recreating images of, oh, this is what black people are. They are fat, loud, angry. They yell all the time. You know, these are the images that are being produced that, frankly, a lot of Anglo Americans, you know, a lot of people like me are watching. And sadly, in this society, which is just completely derailed, they are making the most horrible judgments you can imagine. Um, and they might not realize it at first that they are making these judgments and that these judgments they are making are, you know, split second judgments, and that is racist, and they aren't really understanding uh, or even trying to understand what the history is behind entertainment like this. Not only that, but you know how that pertains to why this type of entertainment is being made and why African Americans or Black Americans, um, whichever you prefer, find it entertaining. I would not argue that if you find it entertaining, then good on you. My argument is simply that it promotes for people who are not a part of your culture. It promotes a negative attitude and a negative image that they then take with them and you know use to formulate their opinions of an entire race. As wrong as that may sound, as wrong as that is, that's the way things are working right now in this completely deformatted culture and society in America. So, I don't think that these are positive images or positive role models, really. Now, you could obviously, a lot of people like to use the example of hip hop artists and how, well, they have a lot of sexuality and in their music videos or something like that, or how they have um, how their lyrics in their music may or may not have references to drugs or references to um, sex or references to whatever, what have you, crime, what have you, gold, money, wealth. It really doesn't matter if that's the kind of entertainment that you want to produce or that you are enjoying, then good on you. But again, the argument could be made, although I don't feel like it holds as much weight. I feel like the argument could be made that that also produces a negative stereotype, a negative image of black Americans in this country. And I want to just kind of discuss the concept for maybe why that is happening. But video is getting a little long. I think I'll have to save it for another video. So in the next video, I'll talk about how maybe, and again, these are just examples. These are not just like, this is one thing and this is the one thing that's wrong in this country. These are examples, like small examples of broad, overarching problems. This is not just a problem with African American culture in this country. It's a problem with the entire culture in this country, with white culture, with black culture, with Native American culture, with Asian culture, with all of the melting pot culture in this country. And I believe that it all has a basis, and that we should consider where that basis is coming from. And I'm going to make an argument for where that basis is coming from, where it's all coming from. Why maybe one of the reasons I'm going to, put forth to you an idea for maybe one of the reasons why this is happening in the next video. So stay tuned for that, and thanks for watching. Peace.